Hello! Hi everyone! Welcome to Guiding Voice podcast series, The Guiding Voice for a Better Future. This podcast is to help students and young professionals to shape their careers. Thank you for tuning in. This is Naveen and I'm with my co-host Sudhakar. Dear listeners, in this episode we want to cover the topic that professionals engaged with the startup fraternity look forward to. And it is one of the most rarely spoken or rather untold topics, and the topic is mistakes that first time entrepreneurs should avoid. And we are pleased to welcome Inian to our show today to have a conversation on this current generation topic.
Inian is a HR professional turned entrepreneur with a rich corporate experience of over 20 years. He worked with some of the largest MNCs in the technology industry, handling teams across the globe. 3 of the organizations that Inian has been part of have been ranked among the top 10 best places to work, and one of them ranked number 1 during his tenure with them. When he decided to step out of the corporate world and enter the world of entrepreneurship, Inian was designated as the global HR director for an organization that was ranked among the top 5 fastest growing organizations in India. Inian did this to follow his primary passion to help youngsters to reach their fullest potential.
Inian has a very practical approach to business situations and shares his perspectives on multiple social platforms as a common sense entrepreneur. He earned MBA in HR from Bhartiyar University and graduated in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from Coimbatore Institute of Technology.
And we are pleased to welcome Inian to our show today.
Hey, good morning, Naveen and Sudhakar. Thank you for having me over. And I'm really looking forward to sharing my thoughts on entrepreneurship and some of the common mistakes that people do, especially first-time entrepreneurs in this area. Looking forward to talking to you guys.
Thank you, Inian. I'm sure our listeners are going to enjoy this conversation as much as we do. Let us get into this conversation. Inian, firstly, though you had an illustrious corporate career, what actually made you to take plunge into this entrepreneurship?
Very nice question. Actually, I did not take a plunge. Somebody pushed me into it. So let me explain it a little more. I come from a very simple, family, middle-class family. My father was a teacher in a government school, and all I was told was, if you study well, you'll get a good job. And I don't know if I studied well or not. I scored good marks, and then I did my engineering. I did my MBA. Everything that everybody was telling was the right thing to do. Then I come from Coimbatore, so moved to Bangalore, which was a big city for me then, and then started my career in the software industry. Started growing very fast, as you grow in the corporate career, and when you start realizing that you're doing very well compared to all your peers, then the next step is, okay, what next? And that's exactly what I thought. And for most people like me, the dream was to go outside of India and settle down. And US was the dream destination, and that's exactly what I did. So moved to the US, used to live in California for some time. And so I was very happy, honestly. I was very happy, dream job, dream company, dream land, good money. Everything was going well. But a couple of things. One was the recession of 2000-2001. That was the first major recession that hit the Indian IT industry. And, I don't know, I don't think the entire industry was ready for it, but who cares? But I was definitely not ready for it, right? I mean, my job, and I was still single. I was still, in my mid-20s. I think I was still fine. But I saw people who were ahead of me, 10 years, 15 years, ahead of me, people who were vice presidents, some, people who were CEOs, directors. I mean, when they lost their job, typically they had their mortgages, their loans, and I mean, I could see their entire family setup getting shaken up. And thank God, nothing like that happened to me. But when I look back, I'm really happy that I got that warning sign right there, because I immediately started realizing, if this happens to me, what will I do? And that was the time I started looking for answers. I was only looking to secure my job. What should I do to secure my job? But thankfully, I met somebody who was there, who was in the corporates. He was from AT&T Bell Labs, and hardcore techie guy. And then he had moved on to becoming an entrepreneur, very successful entrepreneur. In fact, they're currently still based out of New Jersey. Somebody who runs revenue of almost close to about $1 billion a year. The most respected Indian entrepreneurs there. It was a chance meeting them. And when I talked to him about 15 minutes, I realized that by being an entrepreneur, that I can really reach to my fullest potential, which probably was not the case if I was going to work in a corporate. The second reality that struck Naveen and Sudhakar was this, which I was not ready at all. See, at that time, 2001, I was thinking it was a big recession, and this had happened because of the Twin Towers going down. So I thought it was a very big accident. This kind of a thing will never happen in my life again. But thanks to talking to this person, he told me, Inian, every 6 to 7 years, you will see a big financial recession. The reasons could be different. So if you really look at it, 96 to 98 was a dot-com bubble burst. 2000, 2001 was the, Twin Towers going down. 2008 was the major depression. 2012 to 2014 was the telecom industry going bust. And now we are in 2020 and COVID. If you really average out, it's about 6 to 7 years, right? And so that was a big wake-up call. And I think all of this put together and with the right kind of guidance, that's how I started my entrepreneurship.
That's actually an impressive journey and life experience, I would say, Inian. Getting to hear from experienced guys. And I really liked your aspect that every 6 years or 7 years, for various reasons and with various backgrounds, we get hit in some way or other. Most of the times, getting negatively impacted. And starting from 98, I think Naveen and I can definitely connect to the 98, 2000, 2000, 2001, 2007 to 9. Each one diversified reasons, and one unprecedented situation that we are currently going through about COVID. Thank you very much for that great summary.
True.
On our current topic today about the mistakes that typical first-time entrepreneurs should avoid, Inian, what are the things that you think you would do differently if you have a chance to start your entrepreneurial journey all again?
I think I will start earlier. If I could have started, immediately after my education, or something that I could have done alongside my education, I think that would have been a great start. And the second thing I would have done is, I think I would set much, much bigger goals, and I would have worked even more harder in my initial years.
That's really interesting. Don't you think your experience actually helped you to make right decisions by starting your entrepreneurship journey a little late?
Okay, this is what I would have theoretically told you. If somebody told me, why don't you start a business? I would have definitely said, hey, I think let me gain some experience and then do it. But if you don't mind, I'm going to give you a diagonally, diversified opinion here. See, it's like this. Let's say there is a teacher who's taking care of 100 children, but she's never had a child of her own, right? Do you think when she has a child of her own, because she has dealt with 100 children, it's going to be easier on her? Or do you think she will have a completely different experience altogether?
It's a different experience, I would say.
Absolutely. That's exactly how it is. Because taking care of somebody else's child is like, the ownership is missing. I mean, the love is missing. The passion is missing, right? And that is what drives an entrepreneur. So, you might be passionate about a job, but it's like you really are not owning it. Somebody else is owning it. You're not responsible for every single decision that you are. Maybe this is a very, very aggressive response on that, but I think it's almost that equal, difference, Sudhakar and Naveen.
Yeah, I would say it is a different perspective altogether.
And very interesting analogy that you have brought in terms of how children take care of their students. It's not same as you taking care of your own child. Yeah, interesting and great perspective, Inyan. Now, what is the biggest mistake in your opinion that you see which is common across startups or the entrepreneurship journeys?
Okay. If there was only one mistake, then I think our talk is over already. Okay, but so I'm going to take a couple of minutes here just to elaborate it. I think there are three different levels at which most entrepreneurs make a mistake. One is at the thought. Let me try and detail into all of them. One is at the thought process level. The second is the way they identify the opportunity, and then in terms of what we call as the strategy. Okay, let me try and explain all these three. See, at the thought process level, when a lot of people start a business, they start a business because it's fancy thing to do, because a friend of them, is doing, everybody else is doing, or a friend just invited them to be part of something, and or they did not like the boss, or they thought maybe it's some easy money, right? And so these are the different reasons why somebody starts a business, and that itself is a big mistake. Unless you have something, a compelling vision, it could be something for yourself or for the larger society. Unless it's a compelling vision, I don't think we should start a business. Right. The second thing that people do here is, taking the opinion of others. See, for example, let's say you were Mark Zuckerberg 15 years back and you had an idea of running Facebook. Let me ask you this. If you had talked to all your friends, relatives, parents, your mentors, your professors, how many of them do you think would have encouraged you to say, hey, that's a great idea. Facebook is a great idea. Go ahead and do it.
No one, because at the hindsight it looks very compelling, but when you are doing it real time, it is like what a bad idea, man. Who wants to post their personal stuff online?
Exactly. Absolutely, because if you have what you believe is an idea that can be earth-shattering or something that is going to disrupt an industry, there's nobody else who can get your perspective and vision. And so getting opinion of others, doesn't matter how successful they are, is not a great idea.
I think it was Nelson Mandela who said it always looks impossible until it is done, right?
Absolutely, you're right. The other big trap we have is the social media and Google right now. See, we have to understand that Google is a search engine, not a research engine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is not a decision-making tool. But today, if I want to, let's say, understand, I'll give an example here again. Let's say if I want to search about some information about somebody very successful, let's say our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. Now, if I want to go and search about him on Google, I can find his height, weight, maybe even his blood group I can find. But if I go and ask Google, hey, should I vote for Narendra Modi ji the next election? I think I will get only people's opinions. See, internet is a collection of people's opinions in most of the cases. So as an entrepreneur, we need to really be able to identify opinions versus facts and figures. You cannot be blind-faced about an idea. Just because you thought it was good, some people jump into it, or some people, hit the other extreme and are very skeptical about every idea that comes in. So you'll have to strike a balance here. You'll have to look for facts and figures and then go by that.
So you're saying we have to do proper amount of research and perform some data analysis before taking a plunge.
Absolutely. I think there's enough of history in most of the cases where people can see whether in what direction things are going in. See, for example, yesterday I was listening to Jeff Bezos, interview when, he was, I think it was 2000, 2001 or something like that. And people said, how did you even pick out that selling books is a good option? Mm-hmm. He said, 1993, I looked at it, a statistic said internet is growing at 2,300%. So I know that this is the direction in which I should go. Then we brainstormed a lot about which product to look at, which means he was backed by a data of 2,300% of growth year on year.
I think this makes absolute sense.
It was not just because I got a good idea, I feel good about books, I'll jump into it. Yeah. See, because a lot of people ask me, hey, Inian, this is I'm just moving to the next area about identifying the right opportunity. A lot of people ask me, Inian, so which product or service should I focus on? I think that's a wrong question. Because look at somebody selling coffee at the railway station and look at the owner of Starbucks. If you ask both of them, hey, what are you doing? They'll say, I'm selling coffee. But one guy is struggling to meet his ends meet, and one person last year, turned in a total revenues of almost $24 billion. So the product did not make a difference. It is a way that you think. Every business can be done as a small business or a large enterprise. Unless you are able to see the larger perspective of a business, you're missing out on global opportunity. And we have multiple examples for that. The second mistake in this area, what most people do is, people look for glamorous thing and fall for it. For example, let's say 2012, look at Nokia. I mean, it was a global market leader. And 2018, they were struggling to survive. 10 years back, none of us had a touch phone. Today, in fact, it's a surprise if I see anybody with a button phone. Today, maybe a touch phone is a very, very fancy thing to do. So most people want to do something with touch phone. Let's say they're opening a showroom. They want to have a mobile phone showroom because that's a hip thing to do. But what they forget is, hey, 5 years back, these phones were not there. Today, these are the biggest things. Will these businesses survive in 5 years later? So they'll fall for what is the most glamorous thing right now and miss out on the larger direction which the industry is moving on. Because if you're starting a business, let's say in this case a retail business of mobile phones, you cannot just like that dump all your inventory in 5 years time, because in 5 years time maybe all our mobile phones will become wearables. It will be on your glasses, your specs, your pen, your mobile, your wristwatch. That is how it's going to be. So look for value in it. For example, if you don't mind me asking this, which is the world's largest company in terms of revenue?
Walmart.
It's Apple.
Okay, I'm not surprised because both of you are from the IT industry, and it automatically comes in, right? Most of us look within our domains, right? In fact, most people would talk about Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. These are the top 4 or 5 companies that come in. But if you really look at it in terms of revenues, Walmart stands way ahead, right? You already knew the answer, but it just skips away from our radar because it is not in our domain. So what happens is most of the times we are looking within for opportunities within our domain from our past experience. In fact, if you look at it, the world's top 10 companies in terms of revenues, only last year Amazon broke into the top 10. Till last year, we did not have any of the other companies that you're talking about. What you meant about Apple was the valuation. And if you don't mind me saying this, valuation is just a piece of paper. It is what somebody else thinks they would pay for it if they are going to buy. But unfortunately, nobody's ready to buy right now. Right. So if you look at some of the industries that have been long lasting, which have been very, very large, which are very stable, these are not at all glamorous. For example, provision store, Walmart is not a very glamorous thing. Couple of banks, in China, which are ranked among the top 10, are not glamorous. One is an agricultural bank. Can you believe this? There is a company which sells, crude oil, which is among the top 10. So some of them are not very glamorous, but are very, very highly valued. So we'll have to learn to cut through the crap and thrown at us by the media and the marketing agencies, and learn to look at what is the real essence of business. Where does the real moolah lie, right? So this is where a lot of people miss out. The last thing in terms of when it comes to strategy, I think there are 3 important places where we miss out. One is in terms of scalability. Now, what do I mean by that? See, most people confuse growth and scalability. Now, for example, let's say I live in Bangalore. I open a restaurant in Indiranagar, and let's say I'm very successful. Now, I'm saying, okay, this brand is already established. Let me open a few more branches. I opened one in Malleshwaram, one in Koramangala. All these are, hot spots. I mean, really, really doing well. But for every new place that I'm opening up, I need to invest, let's say 20 lakhs was my initial investment. Every new place I have to invest the same 20 lakhs or more, or I have to find competent people to run it, and I am probably running behind all these three places to become successful. In this model, I can never run, let's say, 100 or 200 units of my restaurant. But let's look at an example of, let's say, an Indian example itself, let's say Ola. Now, when Bhavesh Agarwal, got started, his entire initial study of this model, which took about 1.5 years, was with about 200 drivers. So he got his entire system done with about 200 drivers who were willing to believe in him. He expanded that to about 2,000 drivers in one single city and really did a pilot run. Once that 2,000 was really successful, they scaled it to 5 cities covering approximately 20,000 cars in one single shot. And today we have 5.5 lakh cars running under the banner of Ola. That is scalability. What McDonald's has done is scalability. So you cannot confuse yourself with growth and scalability. So the first thing is asking ourselves when we start a business, hey, is this business what I'm building? Am I building it in a scalable manner? Am I building my processes and systems that can be scaled, or is it only growth? The second place is stability, right? In fact, we talked about, when we talked about the opportunity also here, but I want to talk about here. Most people look for things which are very fancy right now and not necessarily stable. So especially if you're a first-time entrepreneur, your goal is to establish yourself in a domain, in an industry which is very, very stable. And there are a lot of industries like that. We already covered about FMCG, essentials. We talk about, healthcare. It's a very stable industry. You talk about, education. It's a very stable industry. Entertainment is a very stable industry. Pick up something from here and build a very, very stable foundation. Don't, unless you're like Elon Musk, unless you're like, some other maverick, right? I don't think you should, worry about starting with something which is very, very glamorous. Because the percentage of people who really make it big, look at even Amazon's Jeff Bezos. He started with books. Books is stable. It is not glamorous. I hope you're getting my point.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Alibaba, right? Manufacturing was already happening. So the manufacturers were there always. The raw, people he wanted to connect the wholesalers to the market. Stability, not glamour. He did not talk about, selling the, competition of iPhone from China to US. There's so much that we can learn from people who are already successful. The third most important factor is profitability. Now, most people will argue, hey, Indian, I see a lot of potential here and that's what I start. Now, unfortunately, what happens, Naveen and Sudhakar, is this. In the initial phases of a business, the business is not doing profits, which is very understandable. But if you're not able to turn around your business and hit a break even within the first 3 years, then there is something mistake. Because if your business is not hitting a profit rate, if your profit index is not okay when you're small, it is impossible to correct it when it is big. Look at all the e-commerce majors in India right now. Flipkart, Snapdeal, Paytm, including Amazon India. Today, none of them are profitable. The highest chance that somebody will turn profitable first is going to be Amazon India. And that's because they have very deep pockets, right? So just because you're growing does not mean that you can be profitable. In fact, this is also something that you will see from a lot of past experiences. For example, if you read Phil Knight, founder of Nike, his autobiography, he says they were doing $11 million in revenues and they were still struggling. They were not making profits. $11 million. Outside, it looks like a very, very big brand. So it is extremely important for us to understand how long does it take for me to turn profitable, and how quickly can I turn my business, my profit index in the positive. I think these are the main areas where most startup founders don't plan enough and get caught themselves.
These are amazing insights, Inyan. Spoke about growth versus scalability, and so is the case with stability versus glamour, profitability versus growth. So these are all often mostly overlooked by the entrepreneurs and especially those who are starting first time. Also, you spoke about McDonald's, Starbucks, Walmart, Apple, that everyone can relate to. These are all great examples. but you gave a different dimension and perspective about how to look at companies and how to identify opportunities. Wonderful thoughts, in fact, very well researched facts. This is very enlightening. So thanks for sharing all these insights, Inyan. Having been a successful entrepreneur by yourself, what is your biggest advice to the startup community?
Find a mentor.
That is crisp.
Most of the times an entrepreneur believes in his idea and he thinks, the idea is so good and nothing can go wrong. He sees the world of an opportunity and he looks like invincible, right? He looks like Bahubali. Now, that is exactly the reason why they should find a mentor. Because the time when you think nothing can go wrong, I cannot do any mistakes, that is the most vulnerable time that you're likely to make mistakes and you're likely to slip. So a mentor is not somebody who is going to give you advice. He's only a person who will be your bouncing board, who will add value to your thoughts, and he will probably from his experience tell you what are the pitfalls that he sees ahead. And I think that is the single most reason why I am here at the place where I am.
So can you share a little bit about your mentor and how mentorship journey has gone through?
Honestly speaking, there's not been one single mentor. But of course, there's somebody who has been running along with me for a long time, more than 15 years now. So look at it. See, the person who told me that every 5-6 years there's going to be a recession, in a way was a mentor, because he was a person who helped me to see how entrepreneurship will bring the best out of me. I'm still in touch with him, and it's a privilege to be even getting inputs from somebody who already runs a $1 billion empire. Person who's currently guiding me, in fact, it's very surprising for a lot of people. He's younger than me. He's from one of the premier colleges, but I am not somebody who falls in for the premier tag, but his thought process. He was already a successful mentor, and once I realized I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I looked for somebody who was already successful. See, it's very funny how people find mentors, right? Let's say you want to be a top-class batsman. Would you get the advice from Sachin Tendulkar, or would you carry the advice from Harsha Bhogle?
Sachin Tendulkar.
I know that was a very commonsensical question. You chose the right answer. But when most people find a mentor, they don't want to listen from somebody who's a 10th standard fail, even though he could be an extremely successful person. They look for the glamour of the IIM. I have great regards for Harsha Bhogle, but if I want to be a commentator, I'll take his opinion. But if I want to be a player, he's somebody who's never been on the pitch and faced an international fast bowler. Let me ask you the second question here. If you want to be a top-class, world-class football player, will you go and take advice of Sachin Tendulkar?
Not at all.
Exactly. So why would I take an advice from somebody who's an employee? He could be a vice president of a company. Going and asking him, what do you think I should about the business idea? If he had an entrepreneurial mindset, he would be running a business.
Yeah.
Or a lot of times I see this. Hey, my brother or my uncle is a top doctor. Let me ask him advice about this. I mean, he's a successful person. I respect your success. But in this field, you have to find somebody who's in your field of expertise of your industry, and you want to talk to them. And I'll tell you, most successful people are very open to guiding you if they know that your interests are very sincere. This is what I've learned about mentorship, and what my personal journey has been on this.
I think this is really cool, Inyan. So you spoke a lot of facts in terms of identifying mentor who is already in the field. This is a kind of eye-opening message. Thank you for the insight.
Inyan, finding a mentor and be clear in communication. I think these are the two themes which are consistent with most of our guests as an advice or as an input to our listeners. So thank you for re-emphasizing on those two aspects. With the experience that you shared till now, just wanted to ask this question, like, how did your corporate career helped in your current journey, or did it help at all or not?
Oh, definitely. It definitely helped me see a couple of things.
good and bad. Okay, the good thing is that it gave me a very, very structured way of thinking. So I couldn't have come out with such a detailed process oriented thinking if I was not having this kind of a corporate thing. So definitely I think in terms of that it came in as we started growing. The bad part about corporate is I knew that there are always people who are looking to cut corners. I saw people trying to make a quick buck here and there by having wrong deals going on, and I realized if I'm going to have a large organization, there are going to be things like that as well. So unless I take care of my team members in the right way, then they will also get distracted. So it has helped me to become a better manager, hopefully. And that's what we see in our culture. We have probably the most trusted culture, that I've ever worked. And it's so glad that, I can proudly say that we have one of the best teams.
Yeah, I think you covered about the team environment and how to be a better leader. It makes sense because, again, once you become an entrepreneur, you have to lead teams. Interesting. Indian, what fascinates you?
Helping people grow. Because, somebody told me that, hey, Indian, your full potential is not HR director. Till that person stretched my vision and set a much bigger goal, and my entire lifetime goal was becoming a global HR director or maybe a CEO. But inside each one of us, I think there's a tremendous potential, and I think that is where I would like to spend most of my time helping people identify their passion, helping people identify the right goals for themselves, and help them flourish.
Very nice. In fact, Sudhakar and I are also passionate about people in the way what we could do. In fact, the reason for starting this podcast series is also help and mentor people with the help of esteemed guests like you.
And help the students and young professionals to be better.
In fact, Naveen and Sudhakar, I'll tell you, it's just amazing the vision with which what you have created it, and it takes a big heart and a lot of effort to put a podcast series like this together. And I really appreciate both of you having me over on your podcast and asking me some questions which might help youngsters. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Indian.
Thank you for accepting our invitation, Indian, in your busy schedule. It was indeed a great conversation on mistakes to avoid as a first-time entrepreneur. And as individuals, Naveen and I really enjoyed this conversation, and it definitely opened some of our different thoughts as well. And I'm sure our listeners would love this episode. And don't be surprised if you get hit with many requests on your LinkedIn profile to mentor them before their ideas.
It'll be my pleasure spending the morning with you guys. Have a great time.
Thank you, Indian. Appreciate your time. Dear listeners, to know more about our speakers and the content, visit or follow us on social media, or feel free to email us, and we will be happy to share further details with you. Alright, it brings us to the trivia segment of this episode, and today's trivia is about which day is most effective in a work week. You might wonder, our energy levels vary from day to day, and especially with Monday blues creeping in, and we will always be thinking that Wednesday is one of the most productive day of the week, but the research says different. If you need to get stuff done, do it on a Tuesday, because according to a survey from Accountants, Tuesdays are found to be the most productive days of the week. So give up getting much done on Fridays, because that is the least productive day, wherein everybody is planning for their weekend. Interesting, isn't it? Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.